Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rooms of a View special, the Melaline edition. Hello, special guest today. My name's Asia. I'm going to be your host. I decided to call this little conference because I know I have some issues with certain things that have gone on, particularly recently, but the whole time I've been in the TERF GC RadFem movement. And it's to do with race and all sorts of things. And I think the best way to deal with that is by talking about it among ourselves. So I'm going to be a bad host and get you to introduce yourselves, if that's okay. And while you do that, I wouldn't normally ask, but can I just ask you to tell me what your heritage is? Because this is something I want to talk about, because I feel like we get all grouped into one homogenous block, and we're not. We're from different cultures, different backgrounds, different countries. We have different histories, and that's important to acknowledge. So I will start. I am mixed race. My mom is white, Scouse, which is the best kind of British, in my opinion. My dad is Jamaican. My grandparents came over in the Windrush, but I was born here and raised here in London. So that's quite different to the north of the country. So yeah, I guess I'm going to start with Sonia because you're on the top of my screen, if that's okay.
Okay, hello, my name is Sonia. I'm an artist and a writer living in Wales. My heritage is mixed race. My dad was Jamaican Indian, my mum Jamaican African. My dad's mother was, she came over with her parents at the end of slavery in Jamaica. Her parents were amongst the first of the indentured workers to replace the slaves. So my parents came over in 1960 to Wales, and we grew up in a very Jamaican, Bollywood, Welsh household. I have a mixed race daughter and I'm married to a white man, so I live with diversity.
Okay, Lesley.
Me, I'm 58 years old. I'm of Jamaican parentage. I'm a first generation British born of Jamaican parentage. I was born in Bristol, not far from Cardiff. Oh gosh, well, I live in London. I moved to London when I was 18. Oh gosh, what else? I've been involved in the labour trade union movement for a long time. Not so much recently, though, I must admit. What else? Both my parents, yeah, they're African, Jamaican heritage. That's what I'm from.
Okay, let's go to Jennifer.
Hey, Jenny, I'm 37 from Birmingham. Homeschooling mum at 3, but I write songs like gender critical songs, radical feminist, woman positive songs. My heritage is, my dad is from St. Kitts in the Caribbean. My mum is white British. She was born in Yorkshire, but I was born and brought up here in Birmingham. And my grandparents also come over in the Windrush. Messing my words up. Also come over in the Windrush generation. So, and then they went back to St. Kitts at the end of their life for like the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, mine too. I might have as well. Iris.
Hiya. Iris. I am an immigrant. I came here when I was 9. Sorry, my mum brought me here when I was 9. My parents are both Ecuadorian, and obviously I'm Ecuadorian born as well. I do have native and African heritage, and I am, I am more, I feel myself to be more British and Ecuadorian, but the roots are strong. So I do still have, obviously, loyalty to my Latina side. I am a member of Women's of the View and also run the Standing for Women's social media.
Artless.
Hi, I'm Artless. I'm 38. I live in London. I'm African, Ghanaian to be precise. My father was a political refugee. he came here because the regime in Ghana were kind of looking to kill him. He met my mother here, who was studying at that time, and somehow I came along when they got married. I was born here, but I was raised in Ghana, in Togo, and in Nigeria up until the age of 16. And then I came back to the UK, didn't like it that much, went back, and then came back again. Yeah. And I've kind of been, you'd probably call me a vagabond or a hybrid, because I've kind of been around a fair bit, like different countries, just trying to work out which one I can kind of deal with the most. I call myself a hybrid. Don't really think of myself as, I'm not a citizen of nowhere, but I think the country I spent the most time is London, is the UK, specifically London. So yeah, I probably consider myself a Londoner if anything else. Yeah.
All right, like I said, I've got some questions, so let's dive right in. The first one is, are you or have you ever been a fascist or racist? I think you know why I'm asking this, because I, for one, have been called racist so many bloody times that it's really starting to annoy me, and I know some of you have as well. So yeah, are you or have you ever been a fascist or racist?
I'm going to answer that. I think yes. I think no, really. I think in the past I have been racist. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Because I was brought up. I mean, we can speak freely amongst ourselves, right?
Yeah. Although you got to think that this is being recorded, so we'll go out. I just want to point that out.
Between us and the whole YouTube family, okay? Don't let it go no further. But within Black communities, there is division and colorism and islandism. And I was brought up by parents who were very expansive, very open-armed, but they had a problem with the Africans. And I think that stems from an unspoken, an overdue examination and truth and reconciliation about slavery. Yeah. And what that meant for island people to feel looked down upon by African people. So, you know, my father, of course, who had mixed heritage, was, you know, he'd suffered a lot of racism. And he was more open to forgiving. But my mum, you know, she'd be happy if you married anyone, but you know, are you sure if it's an African? And we had to go through some learning. Of course, you know, we had a very open household when I was growing up, and we had lots of people coming in to stay, fostered kids and students staying with us and all kinds. So we met people from around the world, and that was a process of unlearning our prejudice. And part of that was speaking openly amongst ourselves and with these people from all these different countries in Africa and across Asia about what it meant to have that sort of your history ripped apart, you know, and then put together by somebody else. And that was crucial for us to, you know, I don't think I've ever been a fascist, and I don't think I ever will be a fascist, but I have certainly invited fascists to speak to me. But I will put my hands up now and say that, yes, I have been racist, and, you know, I'm less racist, you know, than I've ever been in my life.
I can totally relate to the rivalry thing, because my dad's Jamaican, but before my mom and dad got together, she was married to a Ghanaian guy and had my 4 siblings. So I've grown up with both cultures, and we tease the hell out of each other about everything to do with everything. And I have cousins and family on other islands, and we tease the hell out of each other about different islands. That's just the way it goes. So I understand completely. Someone else? Who else?
I will probably add to that. Yeah, definitely, you know, I mentioned before that I came when I was a teenager and then I left. And part of the reason why I left was because of that kind of rivalry between the Caribbeans and the Africans. When I came, the school that I went to, it was, I think people tried to bully me. They didn't get very far, but yeah, it was that whole thing of you put your hand up and the people try and, like, they were annoyed by that fact. You know, the Jamaicans felt like Africans were trying to, like, be properly bookworms and try and act like they were smarter than them. And so there was all this sort of, like, nonsense rivalry, which really, like, it shouldn't have been. And I didn't like it very much. And I was like, I told my parents I didn't want to stay, and I left. And honestly, I think I started unpicking all of that when I was at university, when I came back for university, because that's when it, you know, with all, like, there was an African Caribbean society. We had to mingle whether we liked it or not. You know, I went to a pretty white university. I won't mention its name just in case someone tries Googling and stuff. But yeah, we just had to kind of bond together, and that was what it was going to be. And maybe not so much. I think the Caribbean African rivalry thing, it died quick. But I will say probably my biggest, I won't say antipathy, but sort of arm's length situation was with, so I did a year studying in the States, and then I lived there for a year, and I really had to unlearn my own prejudices about Black Americans, because like, I mean, if you've ever met the New Jersey crackheads, it will just kind of put you off, like, and like the New York subway, it's like a totally different, like, London is so clean compared to all that kind of stuff. Okay, but then you really get to understand the history of their slavery, because they like, race is such a big thing for them. And I think because I grew up in a majority Black country, I never had those hang-ups about my race, because in Ghana everyone's Black, so we're all the shit. Like,
I remember the first time I went to Jamaica and I was like, everyone's Black. I knew that, but actually seeing it with my own eyes, it was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I think it really does give you a sense of self, a sense of heritage, a sense of, like, unflappability. Like, no one is really able to shake that, because it's like, I don't feel any less to you, because, well, why would I? I have a culture that's steeped in history. Like, there's nothing for me to feel any which way about. But I had to learn that about other Black people. And so I'm actually glad that, Sonia, you brought that up, because when Aja first reached out about this, I don't want to, like, go off topic, but one of the things that I found fascinating was, we're all Black people, but we all come from different parts of the world, right? And I didn't even know that everyone was thinking how I was thinking, because sometimes, like I said, because of my own history, sometimes I'm on the opposing side to what other Black people might be thinking. They might be thinking, I don't know, I'm a sellout, I'm a coon, I'm a, you know, whatever it is. So just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean you're going to feel it, Aja, or Sonia, or, you know. But so I was genuinely, like, happy and surprised that, you know, you were saying the same stuff, because I love your poetry. I loved Sonia's, like, writings. So it was really nice to have the affirmation that you felt the same, but I was prepared for you not to, if that makes sense. Yeah. In terms of being racist, I don't think I've ever been racist. I've actually dated all kinds. So I'm not, like, you know, my boyfriend's Ghanaian, though. Like, you know, I had to go back to basics, but yeah. But no, I've dated all kinds, so I'm not racist. I think I just had things to unlearn about, like, other cultures, and when you start working with people and you start meeting them, you unpick a lot of that. So yeah, that's it really.
Next.
Although I was accused this week of being in league with white nationalists, I can tell you I was very fuming.
This is something we'll talk about for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God. Well, I'm not racist. I'm not fascist. But according to some leftists, women and TRAs, I'm both. So that's it, really. I've experienced racism more than, you know.
How does it make you feel being called racist by our own side? Sorry, Liz.
It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me, because I know that they're on a high horse of self-righteousness, where their right to be against racism puts them above me, regardless of my colour, and gives them a right to call me racist. Do you know what I mean?
You know what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about that. It doesn't bother me. I feel sorry for them, really, because they need to get, listen to some of us more rather than pontificate on our behalf.
Do you feel like they're damaging the movement though? Because I feel it's going to be like boy who cried wolf if racists do turn up, which they will at some point. No one's going to believe us because other people have been screaming it at shadows.
Can I just, can I say that I know we're going to come on to talk about this. I just want to make sure we do, because I haven't seen anybody specifically say, any of you are racists. My problem was that there was a pretty heavy implication that you were foolish or ignorant or dupe or innocent or naive or, patsies, all of that. I haven't heard anybody, even significantly, the fact that there were Black women in Brighton, there were women of colour in Brighton speaking, apart from someone, I can't remember who it was, having a go at Maya, who is a woman of colour. And they were pretty much calling her fascist. She can speak for herself. But my big problem, and I'll leave it because we haven't even finished. I'm on tenterhooks to find out whether Lesley or Jenny are fascist or racist. But I just want to say that my issue was they were taking away your agency.
Yeah.
And that is a recurring theme. Yeah.
No, they were calling me a racist at Bristol because I didn't make it to Brighton. We made it halfway, long story, car problems. But they were calling, there was like 3 white girls, young girls, like teenagers, calling me a racist and a fascist at Bristol. And when I got up to speak, I did mention it. And also that I'm probably one of the most liberal people that around, I'm definitely not on the side of fascism, but I think they just use it as an insult to shout, because they don't really have a argument against what we have to say, like an intelligent argument. So they just call every insult out, like a lefty type insult. So racist and fascist are their worst insults, but they don't actually look at who they're screaming it at. No. So, but I've never understood racism, probably because I have my mum and dad, they've been together for like 40 years now. I have one Black, one white parent, and I have 2 cultures. I'm proud of them both, and I just don't see it as any different as to there being like different colours of like cats or dogs. Or I don't get why it's such a big deal with humans. You don't see people going like, I hate white cats or tortoiseshell cats just on the basis of the fact of how they look, so I don't see what we do with humans. I've never understood it, and I've always interracially, like my fiance is Greek, and my baby is like really mixed and has a lot of heritage behind her. So
lovely.
All right, Lesley.
Could you hear me, everyone?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. A few years back, I think it's 2018, May Day. I don't know if you if some of you were around, but the May Day demonstration, which usually takes place in Clerkenwell, I decided to go on that demonstration as I've done most years as May Day has taken place. And my friend and I we were carrying a banner, adult, human, female, and we were met with a load of students, usually from the London School of Economics, on that march, who tried to tear down the flag which I was carrying, tried to push me over in Trafalgar Square, and what I thought was what they called me was a nigger.
Yeah.
One woman. There's a video of it which was circulated.
Yeah.
Where I thought I was called a nigger, it turned out that that word was bigot. All right, which I accept. It was bigot. I was called, and I think bigots turned into fascist. So 4 years later, the bigot has turned into your fascist, and it meets the total incoherence of trans ideology, because it's incoherent. It doesn't matter what they call you, because it's unreal. The whole gender ideology is unreal. It's not based in any material reality. So I think when they call you a fascist, you're being called a fascist by a fascist. Not being called a fascist by anyone who is in any way coherent to any particular societal values. You're being called a bigot or a fascist by a fascist. And I identified it. It was fascism, what I met on that demonstration. I could not believe that demonstration. I could not believe that there was a host of young people who were behind the Crossroads Women's Centre, not Crossroads Women's Centre, forgotten their other name. It's Society for Prostitutes. What's it called? The Crossroads Women's Centre, the organisation for prostitutes. Basically, they had a banner on that demonstration, and there were a whole host of young people behind that banner. So basically, nope, I haven't. I haven't been called a fascist directly, but I think bigots turned into you're a fascist now, because it's a stronger word. To be a fascist means to stamp to them. To be a fascist means basically I have no right to be you, so I'm going to call you a fascist, and therefore they're looking at the man in the mirror usually, with that. But yeah.
Okay.
But have you ever been called a fascist? Is there bigotry in my family? Yes, of course there were, and yes, there was also a bit of banter about it as well in my Jamaican family as well. Sort of, you see an African man with a briefcase and so on. Is it you're carrying a pig foot in it? Whatever. There was a banter between African population a little later, and the Jamaican population. There was a lot of banter around it, and there was a lot of camaraderie around it as well. But also there was a lot of don't put your snobbery onto me as well by working class Black Jamaican people in Bristol. But there you go.
Probably similar to Asians and Asians as in Indians and Pakistanis. Probably, I'm assuming. I'm sure there'll probably be a little, they'll have kind of internal conflict as well, I think. But just because in the UK, my understanding is a lot of the Pakistani Muslims who came from, Mercury or some a particular place in Pakistan. Whereas I think the Indian population in the UK, some of them came from Africa, i.e. Uganda, Asia, so second wave generation immigrants as well. And they were middle class in Africa and came to the UK as God knows whatever they came as. And whereas I think with the Pakistani cohort that came in, it was from a slightly different background. So I think they have that tension as well within their own sort of communities.
I think they're just throwing the word out without knowing what it even means. The word fascism.
Yeah.
It means in one race above another, or a dictatorial society, a bit of both really, a dictatorial society with one race exalted above another race. And we don't, literally our message is nothing to do with that. And we're all a mix of races. So to call us fascists means they don't even understand the meaning of the word at all. I think in my opinion. So it's nothing personal, it's just they don't even know what the word means.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between trans activists calling us fascists and rad femmes or gender critical women calling us fascists, or you know, intimating that there is a problem with us having anything to do with that group or that group or that group. There's a difference between that. There is no difference whatsoever as a Black woman. There is no difference whatsoever between trans activists telling me what to do as a Black woman, or rad femmes or gender critical women telling me what to do as a Black woman. You know, there is already, as a Black woman in society, but a Black woman in politics, a Black woman who is visible, or a Black woman in the arts, a Black woman in business, whatever. Already you are trying to juggle being yourself with having to compromise. Always. We were brought up like that because it's the reality of life in a white majority country. I bet, Artless, when you were in your Black majority country, you know, Ghana or Nigeria or whatever, you still had issues moving through society, whether they came from men because sexism still exists, or they were class related, you know, because that divide is still there. But you didn't have to deal with the racism issue from the point of view of being the, you know, the oppressed. If anything, if anything, you were probably the oppressor. and what an experience that might be. Do you know what I mean? But the issue with trans activists, say, throwing out words and not knowing what they mean, or knowing what they mean and directing them, because of course there is a purpose to undermining certain groups of women by calling them fascists, or saying that they're, you know, they're racists or they're racist adjacent. I don't think, from what I have seen, I don't think that the rad femmes and the gender critical women who are saying that yes, there was a problem with Brighton and there is a problem, I don't think that they're coming from the same place at all. No. I think that there are many of, I'm not talking about people who jump on bandwagons, because you will always have them. And I know that people hate the tag professional feminist, but actually there are people who have made their careers in the media or in academia by saying, I know, you know, basically I know. And I'll write the book on it, or I'll give the talk on it, or I'll write the article. And this is a movement of equals, in that we are all women and we all have a voice. And actually, many of us are growing into our voices. Many of us who feel that we have had a voice, and we know what we're saying, are surprised to learn that we actually have some unlearning and relearning to do. And that is painful for everybody. But in this instance, I understand the argument that says that the enemy, trans activism, has been saying all along that you're in the, you know, pocket of the right wing, and look at the proof. I understand that, because some people were there, and some woman spoke. I've never met any of these people. I don't know them. I just know the woman with the red hair who spoke has a weird, unhealthy obsession, I think, with Meghan, Harry's wife. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was based on race. You know, that's as much as I will say about that. But everything in good time. The point, you know, that really was made very strongly, Asia, by your poem, and which I picked up on then, was that you have got to let Black women speak, because for centuries in the West, under racism, you know, under the empire and the politics that grew up around that. And for millennia across the world, under the patriarchal, you know, sexist, misogynist system of the whole world, women, and Black women in particular, because it's a sliding scale actually, because the sort of the darker you're getting, the less voice you are allowed to have. And now we have a movement that is empowering women to speak out, because there's nowhere else to go. You have to speak out. And some women are saying, on the basis of the fight that we've, you know, the political fight, the left-right fight, on that basis, you need to shut your mouth or step down from that platform that has been provided for you. And that is a problem, because that goes beyond the sort of understanding of racism and bigots and fascists and all that. That's like the enemy within. That's the real work that actually we all need to do, and urgently. How are we going to be one movement, not speaking with one voice, but working towards one goal? How are we going to do that when we are all so different? You know, I think with the death of the Queen, I became a Republican. But I'm pretty certain this woman with the red hair is not a Republican. She just doesn't want any Black people in the royal family. You know, we're coming kind of to the same goal from radically different perspectives. And yet she believes that there's such a thing as sex and it matters. And I believe there's such a thing called sex and it matters. And we have a job to do. How do we work with this diversity of thought and opinion and not get sidetracked into this sort of cosmetic diversity of colour or, you know, style or, you know, approaches?
Can I say, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I kind of see gender ideology and the damage it's done. It's not a left-right issue. It's not a black-white issue. It's not a man-woman issue. It's an issue for everybody. So like it or not, everyone's going to have to wake up about this and fight it in their own way. And that includes the right wing as well. And I would rather them hear our words so they get it right at least. It doesn't mean we're allying with them just because they see my face on a screen or just because two of them record us in a park. When I was there, the ones that looked most fascist to me were the ones that call themselves left wing. But yeah, anyway, this idea that we can't let anybody else hear about this issue because they might get it wrong, but they're going to find out about it anyway. Sorry, Artless.
No, it's fine. So, okay, I think a couple of things. For me, there's no difference between when a TRA calls me a fascist or when there's someone on our side who calls me a fascist. And the reason that is a problem either way is because both of you are leveling that accusation at me to discredit what I'm trying to say. That's the purpose of it, right? So for me, whether you're on my side or not, and once you use that word, like, you'd go down in my opinion, in my estimation, right? Especially if I've ever met you or encountered you or dealt with you on any sort of level, it's even worse because you obviously do know I'm not a fascist. So at that point, what was actually the point of you leveling that accusation, right? So the person this week who told me that I gave leeway to white nationalists, and she was a white woman, I was very offended, and I did tell her that because I felt, look, I've met you. Like, it's not even like I talked to you online. I've actually met you in person. What about me has ever given you the impression that I give leeway to white nationalists? And by the way, if we ever met an actual white nationalist, don't think they'd be giving me a leeway. They'd be wanting to chop me off before they chop you off, darling. You know? So you might just want to go easy on the accusation there, because you've never walked a mile in my shoes. So don't level an accusation that you can't even back up, right? That's the first thing. And I think the other thing about you know, this kind of about Sophie C, I don't know her actual name, like you guys I didn't know anything about her. Okay. I am in this to fight for material reality, right? Okay. And I think maybe because of the nature of my job where I'm firefighting all day, I'm a troubleshooter, right? Like, so the thing is, every day there's a fire for me to put out. Not like actual firefighter, but like, you know, there's like actual issues for me to put out. And everyone thinks their problem is important, okay? So for me, I have a matrix of dealing with that, and it's priority, impact, and urgency, right? Right now, this fight that I've chosen to embark on, because my time is precious to me. So if I put myself in, I'm gonna do it all the way, right? The priority is establishing sex in policy, law, and language. That is what the priority is for me. It's not racism. If it's racism, I'm not telling to you lot to fight racism. Come on, you don't know anything about racism. So like, you're not the ones I'm gonna turn to fight racism. I'm really glad you want to glom it onto this movement. And there are, you know, when we talk about intersectionality, there are areas where sex and race, like, you know, if people learn about it in this movement, that's even better. But I'm not really turning to you. I didn't come into this movement really expecting that white women would really get to understand racism from this movement. I didn't kid myself with that. You know, like most of my friends are like, why are you even bothering with these people? They're gonna do what they're gonna do. They don't understand why I'm wasting my time at all, because they feel like in the end, they will do exactly the kind of behavior that they've just done these last 2 weeks. So they keep begging me to stop wasting my time. They're like, let them eat themselves up. And I keep saying, guys, because this thing is going to hit us all. Even Africa, where we think we're sheltered, if we don't nip this in the bud, it's going to come to Africa, and it's going to be worse in that context. So let's try and nip it in here before it gloms out there, basically. Yeah, so essentially for me, it's a case of with Sophie C, I'm not fighting for her to be a racist. I'm going to fight for anyone based on the idea of sex and gender, i.e., you know, the materiality of sex. And I will fight for any woman on that basis, left wing, right wing, white, yellow, red, whatever color you are. And that's what I'm doing in this context for her. What I'm not going to fight for is her right to be a racist. And so for me, those two are two different things. Yeah. At Brighton, when she spoke, she didn't mention a single word about race. As far as I knew, she came in, I asked, because my friend who was next to me, she knew her. So she's like, oh, that's Sophie, whatever her name is. And I still don't know her last name, sorry. So I'll call her Sophie C. And she's like, oh, that's Sophie C from GP News. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So she comes, she says her speech. I don't recall hearing anything particularly controversial about it. The girl's gone. She spoke for like 5 minutes and she's gone. End of story. I'm not thinking about her. I'm not wasting a moment's time on her or anything. The furore over her to me just seems really out of proportional to what was there. And then I find out that this girl's 19. So, and it's another thing that really bothers me. Some of these women, and I don't mean to sound ageist, like you're 50 something, what are you doing dunking on this like 19 or 20-year-old kid? Like, seriously, come on. It's such a bad look. They need to stop. Like, literally, it's, what are you doing? You're bullying, or like you're targeting. Now you're making her look like a victim. Do you know what I mean? She's probably an idiot, but like now you're making her look like, you know, the best thing since sliced bread. You know what I mean? This is not the way to deal with this. And thirdly, coming back to both of your points, right-wing women also have, like, this thing affects them too. Mm-hmm. So they also need to have a voice. The enemy isn't right-wing women right now. The enemy is TRA incels. Sorry, that's what it is. And I think feminists, professional feminists, have a hard time wrapping their head around that. They don't seem to, and maybe because most of these incels are from the left, they would rather deal with the boogeyman of Sophie C than deal with the real problem that we need to address, which is these male incels who were masked up in black and were yelling obscenities, throwing smoke bombs, yelling vile abuse at us. Those are the real problems, not this girl who was wondering about spoke for 5 minutes and these two blokes who nobody, well, I certainly didn't know them, and I would never have heard of them apart from this. That's not my problem. I'm so sorry, but really, priority, impact, urgency, they're not in any of those things.
Yeah.
There was a guy there who was arrested with a knife. Why are we not talking about that? Because
a whole bag of knives. Seriously, come on.
I'm just so like, you know, so when I hear them talk, I'm just like, are we living in the same world or planet? Because, and then the thing that also pisses me off about this, I'm so sorry to just add this last thing, but half these women, they weren't even there.
Exactly.
now,
We never are.
woohoo,
Never are, but they tell us what happened and what we need to think, and if we didn't think like them, then they tell us we're wrong, or that we're being led by a white woman, but we should be led by that white woman instead. It's just so annoying. Anyway, Lesley, I think you were
yeah, sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, well, I did hear about this from a gender critical leftist feminist group that I'm in on Facebook, and like there wasn't anyone in the group that were discussing Sophie Corcoran that were there, to be honest. None of them were like, we're not going with right-wing Posy Parker, she's a fascist, is this and that. Whereas I just think Posy would be a fascist if she said to women, you can't speak because I don't like your opinions on other things. Like, we're not a cult, we can all have different opinions. It doesn't mean that we all have to agree, but we all do agree on this one thing, like basically reality, like you're saying, material reality. So there was one woman who was trying to explain, you know, like, right, it's not far right. This woman was allowed to speak because she's a woman and she was there. And then she got kicked out of the group by the man who runs the gender critical leftist feminist group. Don't even realise, like. So all these women were like sticking up for this man who kicked another woman out of the group because of her opinion. And I thought, don't you realise you've gone so far left that you're like right now yourselves? So yeah, I fully get what you're saying. Like it's infighting is just going to divide us, I think.
Yeah.
I'm prepared not to let them divide us. And I know people, this is going to sound very controversial and it's probably going to get me a lot of blocks after this, but I've reached the end of my tether with this nonsense. And my thing is, if you feel like you are a shit heart, okay, go ahead and be shit elsewhere. You're not going to do it on my time. You thank you so much. It's not like I'm not appreciative of the intellectual muscle that you brought to the movement. I'll give you your props, I'll give you your flowers. You've done a lot for the movement. But I meant what I said in my post. If necessary, the movement will go on without you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? Because now we, as far as I'm concerned, right now we work in parallel anyway. Like we don't all do the same things within the movement, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's
So it's okay. Do your own thing. We'll do ours. Everyone's doing their own thing. It's not like, you know, I'm Kelly J's assistant, like working for her as a secretary, and I know what she's doing. Like that's not how it's working. Sorry,
Leslie. Sorry, Leslie. You're trying to speak, aren't you, Leslie?
Yes.
Like,
I think we should also. Could everyone hear me?
yeah.
Could everyone hear me?
yeah.
Not still. Okay. I think we should think about how anti-racism has actually been depoliticized as well, just as much as you know, being working class has been depoliticized. It's been depoliticized. It's not on the agenda of trade unions, even anti-racist organizations and so on. It's not on the agenda. We've got a situation whereby a rapist is being sent to a woman's prison. A rapist is being sent to a woman's prison, and not one defense campaign, you know, anti-racist defense campaign is saying anything about this. Yet a few months ago, a girl was searched in her school in Hackney, and then all the organizations, Child Q, all the organizations, you know, socialist worker, militant, Socialist Party, the trade unions, everyone was onto it, but then, and says absolutely nothing when a known rapist now is being sent to prison. No, they have nothing to say when the Sussex police actually defends the rapist, saying you've got to respect their pronouns. And one of these organizations, not one of these so-called defense campaigns, the United Friends and Family campaign, you've got Women in Prison campaign, you've got Amnesty International, you've got, you know, whole organizations in the voluntary sector who have said absolutely nothing about this atrocity. And I think we've got to think of where identity politics has actually filled a vacuum which has been left by trade unions who've become bureaucratized, who've who've become run by the bureaucracy. You've got so-called voluntary sector organizations, which are basically, they just want to see working class people, Black women, Black people as victims. Basically, you've got this victim space, which we're meant to hold, and we're meant to hold this at the behest of the middle class. And I do think we have to see things in terms of class. We have to see it in terms of not just sex class, but social class as well, and the depoliticization which has actually taken place of the working class and of working class organizations.
That leads very nicely into what I was going to say, but actually I've been speaking quite a lot, so I'm going to not say it yet, just in case anyone else wants to speak.
Well, no, it makes sense for you to mention it now if it's to do with what Lesley's saying.
Well,
So yeah,
just about class, because Jenny said earlier that she didn't understand racism, and what even is it, because it doesn't make any sense. And of course, when you think of it in terms of class, it makes perfect sense, because in order to maintain your control over the masses, you need to foment division. And one of the easiest ways to do that in a mixed society, and that's not mixed just on skin tone, but mixed in terms of north-south, or north of the river, south of the river. I used to live in Pembrokeshire, and there's a town called Pembroke Dock, and then there's a bit of the Cleddau, just a bit of the estuary that goes between them, and on the other side is a town called Nayland, and then they're like less than 2 miles apart, and they hate each other. Pembroke Dock is really run down, and Nayland is pretty run down, but it's got a marina, and Pembroke Dock has a naval history. And I don't know if it comes from that, but they hate each other. They're sitting, who gets to sit the highest on this big pile of shit that they have, basically. And if you don't have the difference between groups of people, very soon you have a revolution. And the ruling classes, they figured that out really early on. And if you've ever read any of Hilary Mantel's, who I'm still devastated that she died, but if you've ever read any of her Wolf Hall trilogy, the thing that really jumps out is that it's all still the same people. It's all the same families she's talking about, Sussex and Wessex, and these are all people who, landed gentry. They've still passed it down, Buckingham and all of these people who were there all around Henry VIII and jostling for power. And their families are still there in the House of Lords, and they're still there, in sending their kids to Eton and, sending them off to do PPE at Oxford. And then they're all going into Westminster to work as political advisors, and then wham, suddenly there's an internal election in the Tory party, and that guy's Prime Minister. So class is important, but this is where we digress. I don't think it's the be all and end all. I don't want to think of racism. I don't want to, but I can't think of racism as a sort of, Marxist theory of class. It doesn't work for me, because the world is bigger than that. The world is bigger than what Marx could see. The world stretches, more than just Africa as one great big country over there. But all of those experiments that even now are going on with China in Africa and in the Caribbean and Russia there, and all of that geopolitical pulling apart, which is men again, which is just men. And so what racism is a tool, like misogyny is a tool, and like ableism is a tool. They're all just tools so that the people in charge, the people in power, remain in power. And you can buy into that with money. So the tech bros have bought into that. And they've been accepted because not just because the money has have brought them power, but the information now, the data that they hold on people, that is real power. And so we have this new aristocracy that has grown up with this new money and this new control. And you see how closely it is still linked to the old power of directing people because of their sex or directing people because of their class. You see that in how unequally Twitter treats its users. You see that in the way that Facebook felt able to do deals with people's lives behind their back and direct election campaigns over there, and I think that Artless said something about not being in this to fight racism. These aren't the people to fight racism with. And I disagree with that, because I knew that I was female before I knew that I was Black.
Yeah.
When I was born, when I grew up, I knew I was a girl and I was supposed to act in a certain way before I knew I was Black and I had to act in a certain way. But when I came of age, very early on, I realized that not only was I female, but I was also Black. I was Blacker than any of my sisters, and that got pointed out to me. I knew that it meant something. And I developed an autoimmune condition. So I became, disabled, or I'm becoming increasingly more disabled, with a massive P for the politicization of that and what that means. So I can't separate myself into Black, woman, disabled. I drag that word out because I'm not quite there yet to describe myself like that, but that in itself is a journey. I'm like a crystal with all of the in fact, we're all like that, not just me. I'm not special. We have these facets of our being, identity, if you like. But through it, we have that core, which is the strongest part of a crystal. You can shard off the faces, but that core where they all meet is actually really strong. And that's the bit that I bring to the fight against gender ideology, because some of the people, I really didn't have anything to do with Tories before all of this. Yeah, I knew a few and I could, we just avoided talking about politics and they were all right. But actually, some of my closest sisters and dearest sisters in this fight have been Tory women. And that has been so freeing for me. I have nothing to do with left-right politics. I have nothing to do with party politics now. I was so dyed-in-the-wool Labour before. It was a lie. It's a gang. Red and the blue and all of that is just a means of control so that the people in power remain in power.
Yes.
I've always said that Black people, we are not a monolith. We are not hive mind. We are not, do you know what I mean? Just like white people are allowed to be conservative, be Labour, be liberal, so should Black people. We don't all have the same experiences. We are all formed differently. We are all shaped differently. The left does not own me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody owns me.
Yeah, I want to ask, do you think that the left expects us to show them loyalty, and why?
Hell yeah,
and
kiss the ring.
I think the left have a problem with race, because I think they do.
They 100% have a problem with race. Have you read the Ford reports? They have a problem with race. Okay.
And let's talk about this though.
Did you see in the Tory leadership election, did you see the dissonance? you know, that came through from all of those on the left. The Tories, who are the devil, have put up, you know, brown and black people, too many of them.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, you know, one or two maybe the left could have handled, but they were like, what, 4, 5?
They were having a heart attack. They were having kittens. They didn't know what to do.
Funny.
Yeah,
And then
because
the thing is, it was organic. It wasn't like, okay, you 3 brown and black people are going to run because of your skin colours. It's just something that happened organically, you know.
It's the same as their leaders. They've had what, 3 female leaders now? Where the Labour Party? Come on. And I feel like we're being gaslit into being loyal to the left when it's the left that's pushing all this madness. It's the left that is screaming and throwing stuff at us and calling us all sorts of names. And I'm fed up with this left-right nonsense as well. And I'm not going to be voting for Labour at all. That doesn't mean I'm going to vote for Tory though. I've had people.
I don't know who I'm voting for. The economy is shit right now. But like at the end of the day, Labour's, as long as they're pursuing this ideology, they can get to fuck.
Yeah.
That's just.
Left have become irrelevant though, haven't they?
Yeah.
If you think about it, because I'm to assume that the left is just as racist as it is homophobic. It is just as homophobic as it is misogynist, and that's what we and to try and hold on to thinking that, oh, you know, there's some sort of, you know, appealing to a better nature. You've got to understand that the left has been like this all along. You know, it was something different. When I was during the 80s, when I was in the Labour Party Young Socialist, I mean, that's my background. The Labour Party Young Socialist was a massive organisation. It was an organisation which actually affected social change. I was able to organise with hundreds of other Labour Party Young Socialist members 2 school student strikes, which actually stopped the youth training scheme, which 29 young people had been killed within the first year of
Oh God.
29 young people. I mean, this is, you know, it was quite historic because there was perhaps your you know, parents might have participated on the school student strike, Aja. You know, I'm talking to the women I see who are probably in their mid-30s and so on, right? You know, below.
Why are you doing those looks, Aja? Are you not in your mid-30s?
I'm a lot older than people think I am. That's what I'm going to say.
85 and 86, there were 2 massive school student strikes, which I helped organise with an organisation called the Labour Party Young Socialists, also with a front organisation which was set up as well by the Labour Party Young Socialists, the Youth Trade Union Rights Campaign. 29 young people had died within the first 18 months of Margaret Thatcher's youth training scheme. My generation responded by organising 2 school students. We organised them with the trade unions at the time, which were much stronger. They're much weaker now. They've been progressively getting weaker over decades.
Why are they getting
extremely bureaucratized.
That's amazing. I remember that. I remember it. Like you was part of that.
Also,
Wow.
there was arguments with, you know, I remember having arguments with Linda Bellos over what was, say, black sections in the Labour Party, you know, career vehicles for black people in the Labour Party, saying I'm viciously opposed to organising a black section for black people to be in the Labour Party. Why can't just come straight into the Labour Party? Linda Bellos and me, I mean, you know, the young Linda Bellos, the young me, we would come to blows over that issue, where she'd call me she'd call me a coconut for, you know, I mean, we laugh about it now. I mean, Linda Bellos is actually really quite funny because I met her up at a Rad Femme conference a few years ago, and we'd actually have laughs about how we treated each other back in the day. So, you know, in terms of you know, what I see is what you know, what Labour Party bureaucrats would want to make us into, a victimized status in what the Labour Party would not want to make us into. We have to remind, you know, as when I say we, as women, we have to remind Conservatives, Labour, whatever, non-political Greens, whatever you want to call yourselves, exactly how we fought within these organisations for our rights, and the problems of fighting within the left for your rights as a woman. Oh yeah, that'll be postponed. You know, when the revolution comes, that'll all be sorted out. You know, I don't know if everyone hears about that, but it'll all be sorted out when the revolution comes. Or you don't have to talk about, you don't have to talk about being gay or and so on until the revolution comes. That'll all be sorted out. And it's just like, you know, that actually is a point where you see a complete capitulation of the left in terms of fighting for rights of women and girls. You know, so I don't know. I just think we have to sort of have a history about this as well. That these issues did come up in the 80s when I was young. Yes, when I was 18 and just come to London. This whole idea of positive discrimination, you know, which is basically, you know, I came up to London with my good friend, my best friend in the world. We're still good friends. And we were searching for housing. We went to a housing co-op and they said, yes, you could be rehoused in 2 weeks. You know, that's how long it was, and so on. My best friend is white. I'm black. It was I didn't know about this positive discrimination coming from Bristol. These you know, ideas of positive discrimination so that black people get housing and so on. I didn't know about you know, these actual policies of a mostly Labour GLC, you know, Greater London Council. When we finally signed up for the housing and so on, the housing manager said, hang on, is your friend black? And I said, no, she's white. Well, you can't have this housing then, because she's white. You can't have any housing. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because then both of us are going to be homeless. You know, a black person and a white person, both of us are going to be homeless. So basically, I do see class, and I see the depoliticization of class, but I also see sex class with all of this. But I see sex class a little more than I had done in the past, basically.
Yeah.
By being with the left, it actually makes you foolish. It makes you think, well, actually, you know, perhaps it will be sorted out when there's a revolution. And then you hit your 40s and you're like, hang on a minute, or your 30s.
Yeah.
No, there isn't going to be a revolution, is there? Because all men want power, you know. At the end of the day, all of you want power for yourselves.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's how I've come to see politics now. Yeah.
I've always seen it that way. I've never voted left or right. I've never subscribed like politically left or right, because I just see them as two wings of like the same bird. Like they work like good cop, bad cop. The Labour give and mess up the economy, and then Tories restrict it in and mess up, like they basically give benefits to the rich and mess up the economy even more, but make the poor people poorer. And it's just a cycle that's been happening since like the 1950s. I think it originally started off as a counter to the Conservative Party, as a grassroots, well-meaning like thing, but I think it got infiltrated and took over a long time ago, and it's like had a lot of people fooled, and now the agenda is becoming more transparent with the left. And like I often get called a Trump tard on social media because people think I'm American and I'm like right wing, and it's like the left is all tolerance and and hippiness and stuff, but you've got to be tolerant of everything, even a complete change to your entire reality and the mean definition of yourself. Like, you're tolerant of everybody's feelings, and the right is like fascism, and you can't seem to have a blend of these two qualities. You're categorized against your will into a left or right person by your comments on social media. Depending on what comment you put, you'll be in either camp, you know. So I just don't subscribe to politics in that way.
Artless, I think you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I was thinking when Lesley was talking. So I think for me, part of like this whole idea of wait for the revolution, or you know, you can only get rights if you're nice to us people on the left or whatever. I'm kind of like, fuck that. I don't get rights because I'm a nice person. I don't get rights because I only cozy up to the left. I get rights because I am human, because I am female, because I deserve these rights. They're not contingent on me being nice. They're not contingent on me, you know, being, you know, so, and that's, I think, another insinuation that's really bothered me this week, where I think JCJ made this whole thing of, you know, this is a political analysis. If you cozy up to the left, to right-wing people, you are not going to, we're not going to win this battle. And I was like, well, number one, I'm not cozying up to any right-wing person. So, you know, that's a moot point. But really, it doesn't even matter if I was, because the rights that I'm asking for, and I shouldn't even be fucking asking for them. They're already ours. Let's be right. They're already ours, and you are trying to claw them back from us, and we are fighting to make sure that you don't get your way. And those rights, we're getting them because of the material reality of being born with a female body. Okay, we get maternity rights because only women get pregnant. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be a nasty pregnant woman, but you still get maternity leave, right? Like, it's not contingent on being a nice person. You know what I mean? And this whole idea, you know, and the thing that, because I told you guys I'm a politician's daughter, and the thing that sometimes makes me laugh, or maybe I'm just too cynical, is I'm certainly in Ghana, you know, and yes, I think it applies in most countries too. You know, politicians go, like, politics in Ghana is heated. Like, people, they're not polite. They're like out there, the rallies and everything is really crazy. Okay. But you know what's funny? When we all meet in London, when we all meet in like different, we're all the same. Like, my best friend, her father's the opposing political party, you know, and our parents went hard at each other back in the day. You know, but we went to the same kind of school. We have had the same kind of education. We don't hate each other. I was one of her bridesmaids at her wedding. Like, it's not that deep, guys. Okay. And I'm pretty certain in the English political classes, there's a pretty similar cozy relationship there. Like, they don't hate each other as much as they pretend to. Okay. So you getting your placard and fighting the battle for them, it's a joke. When they're sitting in the common rooms, they're fine. Believe me that. Okay. Well, maybe someone like Angela Reyna isn't. I think she's but even if I hear, like, she's okay with some of them, and like, you know, behind closed doors. So I don't need to fight that battle for you, boo. You know, like, I know that, you know, you make these things as a gimmick, so to rile up the masses. I'm not there to be your useful idiot. You're gonna fight that one without me.
Yeah.
Sonia?
I read, this is all like hanging on what happened in Brighton, but actually I feel this is a long time coming, this discussion.
It is.
And, yeah, and that Jane had a lot of interesting things to say that I found interesting. I read Claire Shrugged. I read, you know, I can't remember everybody I read. The only, you know, if we're naming names, the only thing that I found unhelpful that I read was Sarah Ditem's comments about pound shop fascists, pound shop Marie Le Pen. I found that it just took away rather than adding anything, and it was so unhelpful. That's really all I could say about that, and I ignored it, you know, because I just didn't. adds to that. But I understand what Jane and Julie Bindel and all of them were saying, and I disagree with it, but I understand it because we're coming from different experiences in living our politics. You know, I was forced to radically examine what I stood on when I received, you know, a terminal diagnosis when I was 21. A long terminus. And it changed me and made me really brave in terms of, I know that I have to strip things away if they are unhelpful. And that is all part of my life, but most importantly, my political life right now. And when you have a political philosophy that you have built your life on, I understand how compelling that is. And that is a world view. And, you know, in that world view, there is a threat and you must guard against that. And I don't blame anybody who sees fascism as a threat. It is a threat. And, you know, okay, fascism is going to be on the really extreme right. And I say really extreme so that it can meet the extreme left at the back, which is what it does. So fascism is over there. And then we're going to move this way and we're going to say there are right-wing women, which is a spectrum in itself.
Yeah.
And then there's like a kind of what my husband, the socialist, would call filthy centrists in the middle.
That's me. That's me.
And that's, and there's the left-wing women, of which it is a spectrum, and that is where we are finding Jane and Julie, and I'm there too, you know, but it's a spectrum. And then we have the ultra-left, and actually gender ideology is running right the way through from left to right. So, you know, for all we rail against the Labour Party, the majority of this is happening under the Tories, you know. And so if the right wing were really against it, they can actually do something. They could have done something about it some time ago. So
that's where class comes into it.
Yeah, sorry.
That's where class comes into it, because a lot of people who have affected this ideology you're taking it on, they are from the upper middle classes. It's their kids who have adopted this, and that's why they don't push hard against it. They, you know, and that's across both parties. If you're Labour, you're Conservative, you've got like your kid just says he wants to wear a skirt, he wants to whatever. You're like, oh, okay, darling, do whatever you want, boo. And then, you know, but that's fine at your level, because if you decide to wear a skirt, that's fine. If you decide to do whatever, it's fine. You're not going to end up in prison. If you had a problem, you're not going to end up in a refuge. Let's be frank. You're going to find a friend to go and stay at your friend's house or whatever. It is people who are working class, people who are poor. They're the ones who, if they have a problem, they don't get to go to, oh, can I, if I had a problem with my partner and he turned out to be an abusive dick, I've got friends and family who will take me in so I can get myself on my feet, right? I'm highly unlikely to end up in a refuge, and that's the honest truth. But round the corner, just down the road, I live in Halsden, there are women who will end up in a refuge, and they will be confronted with a man. And that is the truth.
Artless, wait, let me just finish what I'm saying, because
Sorry.
I don't, that's okay, because now I'm going to digress and address what you said,
Sorry.
which was that I think it's more a political class rather than working class, middle class. I see it right the way through. I see what we call, if we can even call it working class now, maybe it's, maybe we can call it breadline class or food bank class, you know. I see it. Everyone is identifying as a special thing. it's, for me, it's like, and it's no accident that it coincides with this social media revolution. But for me, it's like everybody has this image in their heads of what they look like on the poster. And therefore, that is what they're being. So, you know, the Che Guevara poster or the Angela Davis poster, or, you know, this is oppression, this is protest.
Yeah.
You know, get the snapshot now. And so everybody wants that photogenic oppression, whatever that is. And we only really, I mean, it's really got a cachet, and it's sort of like been turbocharged because it is white, middle class or moneyed men who are now adopting that. But actually they're following a load of other, you know, people genuinely oppressed or even, you know, less genuinely oppressed, because oppression actually has a cachet. And that is a political cachet. You know, there's no real monetary value unless it is attached to what politics can give you, like Lesley was saying about getting housing, you know. But well, now, of course, you're seeing that across the world, that if you are trans, or if you will identify as trans, you can get your medical bills paid in America, you can get extra time off. I mean, you can get out of jail. You can get out of jail, the ultimate cachet, you know. It is men who
it seems to be ramped up 100 times compared to other types of oppressive. Yeah,
exactly. And I'll tell you why, because it's a lot easier and a lot more acceptable to identify as a woman than it is to identify as black or disabled, or, you know, you can identify with those things, obviously, but, and some people do want to get their legs chopped off so that they can be disabled, or want to be blinded, or, you know, and some people do take the pills to darken their skin, or have the, you know, the surgery to make their eyes, you know, a certain shape or whatever. But that is extreme, and you stand out as extreme, and not many white middle-class men want to be that extreme. But hey, if you can just say, I feel like a woman, you don't even have to shame. You don't even have to shame. I feel like a woman. Therefore, now have that. You are that. So, and that is a political decision. That's nothing to do with class as we understood it, you know, sort of social class. Yes, it is class in its purest form, which is the male class gets what it wants. And that is, once again, people in power doing whatever it takes to maintain their power. That's exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah.
What did you think of JCJ saying to Amaya that, you know, she had a special responsibility because she was the you know, because she was Sex Matters and all the stuff?
Yeah.
What about that?
I'm on the board of advisory board of Sex Matters.
Okay.
Maya is, you know, she's a bit of a hero. I hate the word hero, I'm sorry. She's a bit of a hero to me. In as much as I have heroes, maybe I should have said that. Can you edit that bit off? That sounds too fangirl. But it's not because, oh, it's Maya, but it's because of the way she stands when she's called to stand. And in a way, it's been easier for her to stand against the enemy that we could easily define. But the thing that Maya has said right from the start is that there is a principle of free speech. And if you're going to fight for it, you have to fight for it for everyone. Otherwise, it's not free speech.
Yeah.
And I think that it is the biggest betrayal of that principle to say, but not for fascists. I say, especially for fascists, I think that we should have a new sort of slogan for the GC movement, which is never no debate.
Yeah.
We never say no debate. That's what they say. And look what happened when people were scared to debate. So what do you
I would
think?
agree with that.
Yeah, what do we think will happen if people are scared to talk about the fact that the right wing also agree with us? Oh my God, it is the height of
it's a privilege. So I think it's a privilege, like to not engage with fascists or racists, because how are you supposed to change someone's mind if you don't speak to them? Right? We can't just ignore it. It's not going to go away. We have to engage with these people.
I think that the most effective anti-racists have been Black people talking about other things, just talking about the world, just talking about life. Yeah, you know, yes, Dr. King spoke about racism and anti-racism, but actually what he did, he offered a vision of the world that was accessible to white and Black. And who's disappeared?
I jumped out, but she'll be back hopefully.
And we have had anti-racist campaign. When I was a student in the early 90s, and we'd go on, you know, searchlight marches and things like that, we always got told, stay in the coach, stay on the bus, because it was too dangerous for us. We couldn't, you know, blend in. There was skinheads out there. And of course, you know, they were violent. But we were on the bus and there were all these, you know, white anti-racist fighters out there, and some would get arrested. Sometimes, you know, it would flare up and it was really in your face and aggressive, and they did sterling work, and some of them actually infiltrated you know, groups, and they were doing all the fighting. And, you know, decades later, fascists are still there, you know, at the gates, populists getting elected. Well, when do we have a chance as Black people to stand up and say, you know, this is our fight. This is our fight. Sure, you can fight, but you've done it your way for years. You know, if anyone's going to change a fascist mind, really, it's going to be a Black person, so that they can see that a Black person or a gay person or whoever else they hate, you know, so that they can see that they have as little scientific grounding to their views as someone saying that you can change sex. We need to show them that when they stand up and say, you know, oh, the left is saying this about gender and sex and they're so wrong, that actually when they stand up and say similar about race, they're equally as wrong. And we don't even have to say it to them. You know, I'm a firm believer in standing on the truth. You just state the truth and you stand on it. Nothing is going to knock you off that, because it's truth. It's solid. You know, even if the police come to arrest you for saying it, you will still stand. Maybe that you will have to stand up in court and say it. Maybe that you will have to take it to the prison and say it. But as long as you stand on it, wherever you are, you will be solid. And that works for sex as it does for race, for all truths, for any truth, you know. And the truth is that fascism, you know, this sort of supremacy that says that this group of people are superior to that group of people on the basis of their genetic heritage, or, you know, whatever else. I haven't looked into it too deeply, but I imagine it's pretty much the same as fascists everywhere and through history is saying. Shit, just lost my thread then by digressing. But basically, fascism is bad. Should we just and we can say that and have that, you know, actually be shown to be true just by saying that. We don't have to be afraid that fascists are going to say, all right, they're popular, they're saying something, we can actually ride on their coattails and will be popular and accepted as well. It doesn't work like that, you know, because if it's not true, it will fall. Does that sound terribly naive and innocent? Because I have actually proven that to be true.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in? Speak on that? Yeah. Because I was just going into text there. I think there's a difference between fascism and racism. Fascism is authoritarian. Fascism seeks to stop freedom of speech. It doesn't seek to enhance freedom of speech in any way. Racism, on the other hand, is born out of material reality, looking at material reality, thinking, because it, basically that I haven't got this because it's given to a Ukrainian family who's just come into the country. Now, I could actually understand that racism. I could actually understand the racism born out of deprivation, born out of a working class person who is employed as a care assistant, getting the sack, and having somebody who is a foreign national come in, doing that job for half the price, and then not having a job. I could understand the racism which comes from that. And I could actually argue and discuss with that person, no, it's not right that you've lost your job. It's not right that somebody has come in and undercut your wages and do your job for half the price, half the wages, which you were previously given. But that's based in material reality. And what we're not dealing with, we know this, we're not dealing with material reality when we're dealing with trans rights activists. But we have to know where they've actually come from, because we are seeing the flip side of fascism with their ideology, aren't we? We're seeing we're seeing a certain revenge for all the Brexit voters. They don't believe that Black people voted for Brexit. I voted out of Brexit. Actually that's when I was called a racist. When I think about it, no, I was called a racist for voting out of the European Union, for voting for Brexit. Oh, I don't exist as a Black person. I don't exist in terms of a Brexit voter, do I? But I know many Black people voted out of a European Union, and that this is, and I think since the Brexit vote, I think this movement, the gender ideologist movement, has actually been built out of the tiny bit of democracy which has been given to working class people to say, actually, you could vote on your destiny within the European Union. And most working class people said, no, we don't want to know. We don't want to be part of that union. We don't want to be part of a union which is giving which is providing cheap labor conditions in this country. And this term, I want to get take my country back and so on. I would find it easy to discuss with somebody who has those views. And I don't think that they're racist views. I just think they're views of a depoliticized working class people who've been depoliticized by their organizations. By the, there's been a surge of middle class who've been sent into working class communities through these boot camps, which have been generated from the academia, where they send middle class students, mostly middle class students, certainly from the Russell Group, the Owen Jones, the Ash Sakars. There's too many to mention, and they send them into working class communities. And these are people who've got middle class aspirations, middle class, not just middle class aspirations, they are living their middle class dream. They are living in their posh apartments, which are cleaned, you know, their posh places which are cleaned for them by the working class. And they want to punish working class people for voting for what they see as racism, voting out of the European Union. And you know, I think in terms of they, you know, and they don't want working class people to see their objective reality. They want to, they genuinely believe working class people could opt out of being poor because they provided a food bank. They run a food bank, you know. They run these lessons, they run these classes onto how to handle your finances properly. You know, they have completely taken over the voluntary and community sector. They've completely taken over trade union organization. They've completely taken over resistance movements, such as, you know, I've campaigned with Sisters Uncut, for instance. They occupied Holloway Prison in, well, a few years ago. They occupied Holloway Prison. Me and my sister went down there. Sisters Uncut had a march to Holloway Prison, which they were going to occupy for a few days. And even on that march, a sister from Sisters Uncut literally said, basically, I want to have a chant on this march, but I don't want the white sisters to chant it, because I feel a way about white sisters talking about, it was something to do with chains, basically, let's break our chain, you know, let's break our chains of oppression. And there's this, you know, a black woman who basically said, I don't want sisters to, white sisters to join in on that chant because, you know, of their link to slavery. Now, I actually found it really, really completely devoid of any sort of class consciousness anyway. Throughout that whole demonstration and occupation, you basically had a layer of young students finishing off their dissertations, you know, using the occupation just to finish off their dissertations and to tell white students who were mostly there. They were mostly students, mostly students who occupied Holloway Prison, because it was, everyone knows that Holloway Prison, well, not everyone knows. Holloway Road Prison was basically closed down quite a few years ago, and it was just occupied by Sisters Uncut. They basically told the white sisters why they couldn't wear dreadlocks, and it was just like, you know, because you're white and you're appropriating dreadlocks from black people. And it was really, really strange because it, again, devoid of any sort of class politics in terms of, you know, or even when was the comb invented? Because if, you know, every hair mats completely if it's not combed. So
I think the Vikings had long.
Matted hair is not appropriation, but, you know, the book of gender and, you know, intersectionality has it as appropriation from black people having dreadlocks, you know. So really enough, we're talking about a movement which is not just depoliticized along class levels, but viciously opposed to working class, and viciously opposed to working class people standing up for their rights. And then in walks, you know, your outriders and so on, who are part of that intersectionality cricket bat, I'd say, which they want to bash over the heads of disobedient working class people who are somehow flouting their efforts to keep them in permanent victimhood.
I think for me, like, okay, so for me, fascism is about using, authoritarian methods to control the actions of others. And that includes some of the tactics that we've seen TRAs use, obviously in terms of trying to intimidate women into silence, obviously in terms of hurling abuse at them. Even in the tactic of calling other people racist is a fascist tactic. It's meant to intimidate other women and not to speak up about their rights, okay? And so when I think about challenging fascism, it's obviously the thing is, you're not going to shut me up, so I'm going to speak up more. I mean, I remember Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, she said, when I think of bad speech, the best way of challenging bad speech is to let them speak more and then let us challenge it more. And I'm a huge proponent of that. Like, in case anyone doesn't know, I absolutely love Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Like, I find God. This is another thing that makes me laugh. People are like, oh, that lady, what's her name? Yeah, she wrote this whole tome on feminism, and then she's like, there's a whole idea of fandom around KJK. I have to be very honest. I have no problems with KJK whatsoever. But like, I'm a Beyonce girl. Give me give me. Oh, there's not going to be a white woman from where does she live, Wiltshire? Yeah, like, it's just, no. I just agree with the things that she's saying, and the fact that nothing that you guys have said has borne out to the truth. Sonya always says stand on the truth. That is like, if there is actually something bad about this woman, tell me, and then give me the facts, and then I can say, you know what, yeah, you got a point, this woman, it's a bit dodgy, or like, you're right, I can't defend that, or whatever. So far, whatever's been held, I have not really been able to make that link of saying, she's really bad. Like, I can't bring myself to stand next to her. I don't hate myself. I love myself. I love Black people. Why would I stand next to a racist? It doesn't even make sense, right? Okay. So for me, one of the biggest issues about this is the use of false slurs and innuendos to silence other women from speaking up. And that's been a tactic that I've observed. I haven't been in this as long as some of you guys, but when I first entered, I didn't know the tension, but I realized, well, hang on, something's not quite right here. Like, she's supposed to be a racist. What has she actually done? Can you actually tell me what the woman has actually done? And you're telling me about the Heritage Foundation, you're telling me about Tucker, you're telling me, what's that got to do with this particular issue? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I just find it so perplexing, if I'm being very honest. And no, it's not a fandom thing. Like I said, I don't, it's no skin off my hair. Like, she's a nice woman and everything, but like, I've only met her twice. It's not that big a deal. Like, literally.
It's not about personalities. It's not about individuals. And even though some voices are louder than others, it's, if they use that to bring up other voices, that is a positive thing. The only thing, I know two things about Kelly J. One is that she platforms Black women. She platforms Black women, And the second thing is that she's possibly really down on Muslim men who organise in gangs to rape girls, mainly white girls. And both of those things, right, I think are positive. Mm-hmm. She may have been intemperate in her language, actually, and from what I hear, from one source, she was. But and that is a problem for the person she was speaking to, between them. But I haven't seen the wider Islamophobia that she's accused of. Have I got my eyes closed? No, nobody's actually brought that to my attention, the wider Islamophobia, if that's there. But she has spoken very forcefully about Muslim men organising in gangs to rape and abuse young British, white and Asian girls, and that it is fear of being accused of being racist that has kept that on the lowdown. And that is a problem. We need to be talking about that. We all need to be talking about that as feminists, as anti-racists, as, you know, pro-diversity and inclusion. We can't ignore that. It's been ignored for too long. It hasn't been completely ignored, of course not. There are some people talking about it. Let's talk about it more. Don't let black and brown men off the hook because they're black and brown. Don't let men off the hook because they identify as trans. Don't let men off the hook.
Yes.
Don't let men off the hook because they're the same political party or faction as you. Just stop letting them off the hook. Don't let men off the hook. They're GC and they're trans. Don't let them off the hook. That's basically it.
That is the thing right there.
Yeah. Don't stop letting them off the hook. That's fine. Listen, men will come. Men will come if you are successful in what you're doing and what you're saying. If you got a message, men will come because men come. Sorry, that sounds terrible. Strike that. Strike that.
But I get your point, because that's
men
another...
take over. They take over is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't have to let them. We don't have to make it easy for them. We don't have to say, you know, oh, that's a bit racist. I won't, okay, you're right, I won't say that. No, you know what? The most racist people are the ones that hide behind their race to do their business. It is just outrageous, you know? So
yeah. I'm so, like, for me, it's the whole idea of the fact that if a man has said something, he's from your tribe, be it your class, your race, your whatever, you're not supposed to then, like, you know, condemn him or whatever. And the whole point of, I mean, obviously I have no truck with Tommy Robinson whatsoever, and the fact that I'm even having to say this is absolutely absurd. But ultimately, he said something that a lot of white feminists at that point were scared to say, and that's why he had an opening for other people to listen to him.
Wasn't that the most infuriating thing, though? That it took him to. Just I can't articulate because it infuriates me.
it is. It's outrageous that the left has vacated the platform for the right to come forward. We see it with and you know, people have no.
Was saying what he was saying, but it wasn't like because he was saying it. She was saying it because that was the material reality of what was happening, right? Okay. So I think over the last couple of days, in case you haven't noticed, JCJ has been one of the people who's really disappointed me in this whole situation, because I did have so much respect for, like, you know, the work that she's done for the movement and intellectual. Like, I read a lot of feminist theory, right? Okay. I think she's done some phenomenal work in terms of the output that she's released. But there are also other intellectual feminists that I admire and I've read, and you know. So I've just been very upset watching her. She's not made the argument very successfully. Like, when I saw her attack Maya last week, I was really, really disgusted. I thought, no, what you're saying, you're making a political argument. You're not. You're making a personal attack on a woman who's done a lot for this movement.
But Artless, listen, right? We are the side of never, no debate. So Jane has to put those points so Maya can really know what she stands on.
Absolutely.
You know? And we all need to hear those arguments. And we all need
that she was making, they felt like she was mudslinging rather than making an argument. If she was making an argument, I'm all for it. Talk more. But if you are trying to imply that Maya is some sort of fascist because because two guys came with a camera and she was at that event, and that's where that conversation seemed to be leading to me. Yeah. That is not a political argument. You're trying to assassinate someone's character, right?
this is the thing with all this what's been going on. That's the whole insinuation throughout. You know, it's.
So, and then she says that she's making a political argument, maybe to someone who's not really thinking about it, but that's not a political argument. I mean, you can say, you can raise the concerns about fascism and that, and you know, I had my own concerns once I found out about this Hearts of Oak streaming. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, well, you know, I'm ready to risk my reputation for GC feminism. I'm not willing to risk my reputation for Tommy Robinson now. Let's be frank. Like, well, he can go wherever he needs to go. So, of course, and this brings me to my second point. If I have a problem with someone who I'm in a political movement with, and I actually have, I've met you, I've had, you know, and I believe Maya and Jane have met several times and whatever. I don't know that this is the way I would choose to conduct it. I hear your point, Sonia, about we need to have these debates out in public, but it felt very much like an attack the way she chose to conduct it. So I don't know whether I would have chosen Twitter for that moment, or if I would, it would probably be a DM conversation, be like, well, hang on, how do you justify this? And do you see how this comes across? And, you know, X, Y, Z, because you're totally giving armor to the people who are trying to label Maya as a fascist. You know what I mean? And one of her friends, I can't remember her name, well, Danny actually, but I can't remember her surname. She was also, you know, earlier on last week, it was all, if you stand as fascist, you are a fascist. If you are, you know, if you get, and her friend Rose as well, if you stand as fascist, you are a fascist. If you are, a racist. And you're like, what are you even talking about? And they're demanding that we make an apology. That's the thing that sent me. I was like, girl, I'm not giving you any apology now. You can go and hang from the nearest tree or whatever you need to do. Sorry, that sounds a bit vicious, so maybe cut that. But what I'm saying is, you're not getting one apology from me, not today, not tomorrow, not any other day, dude. Like, yeah, you're not getting an apology. Okay. Why would I apologize to you?
I'm going to jump in and just give you all a last chance to say something, because I'm a bit conscious of time and I need to have dinner. So let me give it to Iris first, and then you have up Sonia, and then anyone else that wants to jump in.
Listening in, obviously, because I missed some of it, but picking up on the Maya thing, another thing people have not seen because it's been away from Twitter is the attack on Maya on Facebook as well. There was one particular post where literally she was having to defend herself against all these women coming at her from all angles, and it didn't matter what she said, they would gaslight her into trying to agree with them. You know, I mean, I even saw a hint of blackmail in one of them. You know, it was that intense. So I have great admiration for her for sticking to her guns and batting them off each time. You know, I couldn't admire her even more. So but this is what got to me. It got to a point where I just had to switch everything off, because it was the constant attacks at women, constant attacks. It was like, my God, yes, you've made your point. You know, deal with the fact that women are telling you what you don't want to hear. Just leave women alone, you know, just leave us alone. You know, go and deal with what you think the problem is amongst yourselves. That's my rant.
Yeah, so I'm really sorry to hear all of that about Maya, because I have taken regular breaks from Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I didn't see any of that. When I was getting frustrated with people's comments, I come off Twitter so I can think it through myself, otherwise the temptation to just attack is too strong. So I missed a great deal of that, but I'm not surprised that Maya stood there and batted and fought her corner, because she's standing on the truth, because she stands for free speech. And it is inconsistent, and there's an internal inconsistency, which means that standing for free speech for them, but not for them, will always fall. But standing for free speech for all, that is where you are supported. So she stands on that. I stand on that as well. And it means that sometimes it's uncomfortable for me, because I can hear stuff that I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But that tells me that I need to examine what I believe in so that I can counteract that. You know, sometimes maybe I have to change my views on something, you know, because I've heard something that otherwise wouldn't penetrate my safe space. But we can't live in a safe space anymore. You know, life isn't like that. And the one positive thing of this attack on sex has been that it has torn down the walls that we thought we had around each of us as individuals. We are individuals, and we each have an individual, we have an individual connector that we can connect to other people, you know. That's how communities form. But actually, it's got to be real. And if you're connected to someone you think you are, and then something happens, circumstances, or, you know, somebody else comes up and tries to connect, and the other person doesn't want it, you break apart. That's a false connection. So what I see that is happening on Twitter and all around in the GC movement is that we are losing our false connections. And that can only be a good thing, because we have to stay, you know, I think that we're making loads of gains in fighting gender, but gender is embedded, you know, we say gender, but what we're talking about is powerful men. And it's embedded across the world.
Yeah.
And the, you know, TERF Island has come out. I'm so proud, you know, and we have been fighting and we have shown the way for these pockets of women around the world, and the potential to join up, you know, through technology, but also, you know, coming offline and doing it in real life and through word of mouth. All of that is so powerful, that there's got to be a last stand sometime. The men who are pushing this and benefiting from this have most of the power, most of the money, most of the platforms, and we're really batting above our weight, and they're going to come out, and I truly believe this, they're going to come out and really give us that final battle at some point. And we need to be ready for it. And all of these false divisions, you're too right, or you're too left, or you're too, you know, black separatist, or you're too Muslim, or you're too this or that, they're all false connections. And it's things like this where it's messy and it's hurtful and it's desperate, actually, and people are speaking their minds. That, I think that is so valuable, because what will be left after that, and it's happening in public as well.
Yeah.
And the sort of tweet trail is there for other people to see. Is the gender critical movement right wing? Well, you know what? They almost ripped themselves apart figuring that out. And this is what stands now. And what stands will defeat this. I believe that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I just think, like, going back to the Brighton thing and Kelly J and everything, I think Kelly J has just been subjected to a massive smear campaign online. Like, there's not much, a bit like with J.K. Rowling, there's not much actual evidence of her being a racist in with bed with the far right, or like she may have some conservative values, but that's her opinion. Everyone is allowed their opinions on things. I mean, I've chilled with Kelly J at the pub after the Standing for Women protests. Obviously, when I was there in Bristol with the trans rights activists, they couldn't understand why I was there, because they'd heard a lot of stuff about Kelly J, obviously never met her in person, and they're like, well, you stand, like, they're calling me a racist, and then I was like, how can I be a racist? And they're like, well, you're standing with racists. I'm like, well, how can they be racist if they're standing with me?
Make it make sense.
So and with like the people inside the feminist movement that are attacking her, I think they too have listened to the smear campaigns, haven't really gone to any events. there's a bit of jealousy involved with some who are on Twitter who tend to have a big following on Twitter but don't do anything other than sit on Twitter and talk about it. They don't organise outside events. But I will say for Poesy for Kelly J is that through her events, I've met women of different classes, of different races, just across the board, different ages, and have friends now like that are all across the country, the whole country. So I'll be driving from London to Bristol to Manchester to meet women that I've met through her. And I think that she's a big uniter of women of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds. And I think we need to give her that credit. And I think some people need to stop reading and believing what they think online. And going back to what she said about the Muslim men, everyone can stand against that. Like, it's not a racist thing, and you can't be scared to be accused of racism just to point out that there is a demographic that's committing a certain crime or whatever. And so, like, it's the same with the trans thing. You can't be scared of being called transphobic because you're pointing out that they're men, you know? So I do think that through that, I met you, like, I've met some amazing women. There is positive, like, to take away, and I think we just need to keep uniting, like, try and close the gaps with the division. Even if on Facebook we can get into some of the arguments, try and diffuse it and reunite, because I think being united is our biggest strength.
All right, I think that's a nice place to end it. All right, so thank you for watching, everyone, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for
next time. I think we should definitely do this again, though, because
Yes, definitely.
nice to meet you, ladies.
Our job for doing this.
Bye. How do I end this?